All right, there we go. Welcome everyone, ZDS 078 with the NgWorkers. It's so awesome to have y'all here. Let's take a second before we get started to just go around and introduce ourselves. Maybe Santosh, you get started.
Yeah, hey everyone, hey Jack. Thanks for actually inviting us here. So my name is Santosh, and I'm one of the Google developer expert for Angular. I'm also a GitHub star and author ambassador. Apart from that, you may actually see me right now. I'm a little bit involved in Lumberjack. I'm doing a little bit of schematic stuff. I know I'm really late in delivering everything, but yeah, I'm just trying to do my best whenever I get some time. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. You also have your YouTube channel. I'll make sure I put it in the links down below. Santosh's YouTube channel has been going off recently, so very cool to see the stuff you're doing. Lars, you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, I'm Lars Brink. I do a lot of stuff. I work on the NgWorkers team, and we'll talk about that today. I recently started a live stream called Angular After Dark. That's kind of fun. It's a lot of live coding.
Very cool. I've yet to check this out, so I'm gonna have to see if I can look this up. In addition to that, Lars, you're also running like a publication on dev.to now. Is that correct?
Oh, right. Yeah, two actually. There's one called This is Angular, and This is Learning, which is everything other than Angular.
Cool. I was only aware of the one, the This is Angular, but I've been seeing your publication attract more writers, and that's been kind of cool to see. So
yeah, it's just it's an open platform for publishing, and there's a lot of benefit to publishing on a dev community publication rather than on your personal feed. So it benefits all of us. We collectively we attract more readers, and it's open to everyone who wants to join. So just reach out if you're interested in learning how to become a better writer and get some more traction for your blog posts.
Very cool. Well, I'll figure out the links for Angular After Dark and for your dev.to publications. I'll make sure they get in there so people can check that out too. So, Serkan, last but definitely not least, how are you doing, sir?
Not least. So my name is Serkan, also called a bit collage. So I'm collecting bits to something good. So I'm from Europe, Hamburg, Germany. It's near to Denmark. Yeah, I'm happy to be part of this stream. So thank you for that. I like your videos as well.
Excellent.
And I also work in my free time for NgWorkers. So I'm working currently on a spreadsheet. Tables. So table spreadsheet. Something new. So it's based on CDK. So that's.
I love tables. I love the Angular CDK for tables too.
Yeah. We are using the same CDK, but it's we are not inventing the wheel new. So it's nothing new. So it's maybe it's the end of the stream. I can show also.
Yeah. Well, we can definitely get that in. That would be really cool. I'm all about tables, so.
About tables, okay.
I love tables. Yeah. The weird quirk about me. But anyways, so between y'all, you kind of formed the NgWorkers group. Nacho was unable to join us here, but he's kind of like the fourth horseman, as I understand. So Nacho, sorry you couldn't join, but you're with us in spirit. But yeah, just to maybe tie some of the dots together too. I thought this was really interesting, like where y'all are stationed. So Santosh, you're in India, and Lars, Denmark. Is that right?
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin Serkan is in Germany, and then we have Nacho. Is he in Venezuela or
Uruguay?
Right? Uruguay. Okay.
I'm originally from Cuba.
From Cuba. That's so cool. Like just seeing that and seeing y'all work together and come together, even knowing about each other, it's kind of weird, right? Like go back not that far. It's kind of bizarre, but very cool to see how that's coming together. So I don't know, Lars, you want to maybe tell us about how the group came together, what y'all do?
Yeah, so we probably met each other through our writing and through common interests, of course. We've known each other for something like 2 years, and Santosh and Serkan even worked together on a job.
Oh, cool.
At the same employer for a while. So we are supporting each other in writing, and then Nacho was doing this Lumberjack project, the logging library for Angular, and he published the first version last year sometime. And after a while, I looked at it and saw some things that I could improve, so I added a few pull requests, and then that was the snowball. Like, that's the snowball effect from there. So we kind of rewrote the entire library and figured out like which breaking changes we wanted and a strategy for what could be the best approach for this library, because it has some interesting aspects that we'll probably be discussing more in depth. But that was how NgWorkers came to be. He already picked out the name, and then we were lucky enough to have Santosh joining us, and Serkan is working on some projects, and we are actually working on 3 different groups or suites of products now, or open source projects. There's NgWorkers, there's one called NxWorkers, and there's even one called ESWorkers. So we are working in 3 mono repos, and Lumberjack started in its separate repo, and it's still there for now, and there's an ecosystem around Lumberjack, so there are many projects going on.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool. I'm sharing the screen now for y'all's GitHub org. I was crawling through here a little bit, just doing whatever research I could before today. Seems some interesting stuff here. So, yeah. But yeah, just before we jump into Lumberjack, I'd love to take a deeper dive at both this and Spectacular, and also tables and the ES workers and stuff like that you were mentioning, Lars. But before we get into that, for anyone listening here, how can we help support the NgWorkers and the work y'all are doing?
We're not accepting donations, so the best way to support us is use our packages, file blog reports, tweet about it, write blog posts, videos. We're also working on some videos, and we're trying to promote them ourselves through your show and other events. So that's the best way you can support us, and just show your appreciation. Maybe like find us, like we have, for example, we have channels on the Angular Discord server, because these 2 libraries on your background, they are related to Angular. So we're on the official Discord server. So that's the easiest way to like contact us and have a live chat. We'll be happy to support you for whatever you need.
That's awesome. Yeah, I will go out of my way too to recommend, if you're looking to get into open source, this seems like a really good opportunity to see where you can contribute, both in terms of submitting code and also working with producing content. Because Santosh and Lars, I know, done stuff with them before. They're great, really great feedback. Serkan, I haven't worked with you as much, but you always seem cool on Twitter, so I'll give you the promo too. But yeah. It's also really cool just to see all this kind of group kind of form up. I put in our notes here, like it's kind of cool to see like groups like NgWorkers pop up. There's NgNeat out there too. They do really good work. I've been very impressed by their packages in the past. So that's an interesting topic. Like open source groups coming together. Like the only people who met each other physically were Serkan and I. We met at NG Vikings 2 years ago in Copenhagen. And then COVID happens, or if that didn't happen, we would probably have met last year, all of us. But yeah, someday, right? We're collaborating with another open source group called JS Cutlery. Okay. It's Younes, the Angular developer expert, and his colleague, or I don't know if he's a colleague, he's called Edouard Bozon or something like that. They're from France. And they're doing some interesting stuff as well. They're doing NX plugins that we're going to use in our repos. So we're collaborating on how to improve their tooling, and they are happy to have some real-world usage on their packages. So
yeah, that's been really interesting as well. And they have a similar interesting story to how they found each other and what they're doing together. And they were asking kind of like, how can you scale something like this? And what did you do, and how did you come together?
Yeah, also to mention the collaboration with NgXS, I guess, for...
Oh, right.
Yeah.
We're, as part of Lumberjack, we created a GitHub action, and both the NgXS team, it's a state management suite of libraries for Angular, and the Angular testing library, they are both interested in using our GitHub action for improving their own CI/CD setup.
Cool.
That's
What does the action do?
It's called the Angular versions action, and it manages Angular dependencies so that you can, for example, what we're using it for, we're testing Angular with Lumberjack across many versions of Angular. So every version from 9.0 through all the minor versions up until 11.2. So we're actually using it in a real application, and we're using a single source code-based solution so that rather than having 10 different application projects, we have just one, but then the action goes and changes the version of Angular and related dependencies, installs them, and then runs the application with Lumberjack in all these versions of Angular. So there's a CI job running per version of Angular. And not only for one job, actually for several jobs. So we have 49 jobs being run for each commit right now. So it's a really impressive setup. It's on the unit test level, integration test, end-to-end test. Even our schematics have end-to-end testing throughout the different versions of Angular. So if you go to the actions in the top, you'll be able to see that. And yeah, this is the CI workflow configuration. So somewhere in here you should see, or actually several places, you should see NgWorkers / Angular versions action.
Not finding it at the moment.
Angular dash or hyphen versions.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
That's caching actually.
Let's see. Angular dash. Where's my typing? There's a lot here. Okay, there you go. Angular version. Okay, so there's your matrix strategy. Got it. So you test across all of these things in this array here.
Yeah.
Down here. Very cool.
So we do it also for Node.js and some of the other jobs. You can see we have Node.js 10 and 12 in the app job.
Yeah.
So that runs the official GitHub setup node action to install whatever node version you're asking for. And since they are both supported by all these versions of Angular, we're also testing across node versions. And then we wanted to do the same with Angular, but including minor versions because sometimes it affects a library. And especially since a minor version can introduce a new version of TypeScript, which always has breaking changes. So we if we look at line, 118, that's our action that's on the GitHub Marketplace.
Cool.
And we wanted it to be reusable across libraries. And I have been presenting talks about how we did this and the whole CI workflow around Lumberjack.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Desrier of Angular Testing Library reached out, and then Mark Whitfield, who saw one of the talks, because the NgXS team has been doing the same, like integration testing across versions of Angular, but their solution was the more naive solution of one project per version of Angular, and it was one project per major version of Angular, and maybe another duplicate for Ivy and one for Vue Engine and so on. So it was a maintenance nightmare, right? And they didn't do a lot of tests. I think, in fact, it was just a build. Because like if you introduced one test or one more feature in that demo app, you would have to duplicate it 15 times throughout all the projects. So that's what's nice here. We have the same source code being run across all these versions, and even the same tests are being run across all these versions of Angular.
Yeah,
that's super
awesome.
Interesting, and we're happy it's useful to other people. And we just got our first bug report that we're working on solving. That was just a community member that wanted to see, like, he had an older library for Angular, and he wanted to see how compatible is this with Ivy, for example. I created this for Angular 5. How does it do in Angular 11? And it's just passing parameters to an action, so it's super easy for him to test it out. And then he found that, we overlooked something. So we're very happy with that bug report, and we already have a solution coming up for fixing that.
Very cool. Yeah, I imagine it's as simple as just adding some versions into this array, Just
yeah, exactly. And it'll tell you exactly which version of Angular has the issue.
Yeah.
If you go to the Actions tab in the top of this GitHub page, Actions, and then take the top one, feed, create, logger, schematics. That's not the main branch, but still the same. Everything is run on all PRs, all the pull requests as well. So as you can see here, that's all our different jobs, and we have the build job, which produce a bundle of the library, and all the right-hand side jobs, they use the actual NPM package.
Yeah.
Not the TypeScript path mappings, even though we're working in the same repo. So it's really an end-to-end test of the package in a real library, running unit tests in the library, running end-to-end tests on top of that, and running schematics in a blank project without Lumberjack, and seeing what's the result of running those schematics from the command line.
Yeah. So build.
This one is the app job, so that runs unit tests in the library.
Gotcha.
So that would be that there's a lot of setup, and then finally yarn test CI and yarn build. These two. Those are the unit tests in the application project. There's not a lot, but like introducing one, there's more in the library itself. But introducing one, then you have it in all these versions of Angular, and then most importantly, a production build as well of the application. And NgCC is also included in this pipeline of setup.
Yeah, very cool. So it's almost like you're automating scaling, which is very impressive, just with the action here. So very cool to see this happen. But yeah, let's see. I'll make sure I throw in the link to the GitHub action as well.
And we're not even using NX, but despite that, we have the whole thing completing 49 jobs within 6 minutes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's you're just running those in parallel, I would imagine. Is that the
There's
idea?
a lot running in parallel, between 10 and 30 at a time.
I imagine.
We're an open source project, luckily, because that's like every CI run is like, that's probably an hour of compute time for each commit.
Goodness. Well, so are you able to run these? Does GitHub Actions? I've messed around with them just a little bit. Is there a certain point at which a certain amount of compute power or compute time you start getting charged?
Do you know, Santosh? You're a GitHub star. Do you know about the open source licensing?
I'm not sure. It should be free, but for my account, I think they have given some credits. I'm not sure how much, but with Pro account they have 3,000 minutes, something like that. But I don't think so for open source there is any limitation, as far as I understand, because people are doing bit mining on GitHub Actions here. So I think it should be free.
I was wondering about, like, if this is free, it's time to write an open source miner.
As far as I know, there's no limitation. At least we haven't run into it yet, and we have spent a lot of minutes. So we're very thankful to GitHub for sponsoring open source.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Maybe there's a limitation on how long the pipeline can run. So if you want to mine something, so Bitcoin mining, so you can run the pipeline, I don't know, month or just an hour, I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting. Microsoft ran into this issue with Azure DevOps, the Azure pipelines. They had like a free tier, like you could use 10 parallel jobs for many minutes each month if you were public repo, so for open source. And they had a free tier for enterprise as well. But recently they had to remove that because it was being abused for, probably for Bitcoin mining or something like that. So that's sad that that takes off the incentive incentive to do open source. Because if we had to pay for all this whole setup ourselves, it would be very expensive.
Yeah. It is cool to see the community rise up to that, between GitHub and there's several things I've noticed that have the free tiers and have entirely
using Sonar Cloud as well, and they also have a completely free tier for open source, and that has improved our code quality a lot. It's an interesting tool as well.
Very cool. Yeah. So y'all mentioned you don't accept funding. Would you look into doing some sort of? I know GitHub has the integrations where they'll set up the donation page. Santos, you know what that's called by chance? I'm forgetting.
Sponsors
or
Open Collective. There are two ways. I mean, either you can go with GitHub sponsors or Open Collective.
Yeah. Have you all ever considered doing something like that to focus on this more, or is this more? Do you think this will kind of mainly be more of the side project kind of deal? We don't need to get into that if that's too.
Personally, I don't care for all the tax papers in Denmark just to earn a few bucks. So, but if anyone from the team was interested and could make good use of this, I don't really need the extra money. Of course, I'm open to opening it up, but I don't have a personal interest in it right now, and we don't really need anything as a team. So,
well, it's cool. I imagine where the cost would come in would be some stuff like this, setting up your CI pipelines, getting this compute time, to have that provided for you already. It's a pretty cool environment we're in. I don't think things were like this. You go far back, maybe even 3 years. I don't think things are as easy for open source stuff to get started.
I think the NGXS team, they have been using, I think it's Travis, and they were even using a second CI provider.
Circle
What's
CI.
that? Circle CI, yeah. But I think one of them or both maybe shut down the free for open source license. So now they're looking to migrate to GitHub Actions as well, and it's really a pleasure to work with. You can do a lot of interesting stuff with it. I just had a live stream about how you can very simply create a custom GitHub action by combining it with the power of Node.js scripting.
Yeah.
So that's really a nice way to make a custom step in your GitHub workflow. And one of the more unique things about GitHub Actions is that you can hook it into all events related to GitHub. So a tag, a commit, a release on GitHub, a new person joined, a pull request was opened, an issue was opened. There's events to hook into for all of that stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, like I said, I've messed around with it a little bit, and it seems like there's a lot of potential there. I'll have to check out your live stream on this, Lars, because there's a lot of really cool stuff that I always thought was kind of inaccessible. But the little bit I've worked with it, it's it's just setting data on a YAML file, and you're pretty much good to go. So it's kind of nice that way. Santos, I think you've done some stuff on GitHub Actions on your show as well. Maybe that was a while back.
I did. I did an episode with Martin Woodward, who was a development manager for GitHub.
Okay.
So I did an episode. Sorry.
So he probably knows how it works.
Actually. So there were a lot of new things for me as well because I was listening for it for the first time. But I mean, even in GitHub stars channel, right? People keep discussing about different uses they have, the different things they are doing with GitHub Action, and I'm always what is this possible using GitHub Actions? And there are a lot of things you can do. People are actually building their own static site generators using GitHub Actions. So I'm not sure what is next going to be.
That's really cool. All right. Well, we're getting along in our time. I want to make sure we look at Lumberjack and this spectacular. because they look really cool. Lars, were you going to show a demo for Lumberjack? Can we look at that one first?
Yeah, I mean, I have a talk about it. We can go through the slides quickly
Cool.
and discuss the points. And I can also show like a demo in an Angular application, how to add it. Let me try to find here the slides, then I'll share my screen.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I recently had a lightning talk at GitHub Satellite India. That was a 15-minute talk, and it was more about this CI workflow that we just discussed. But I also had a talk about like the Lumberjack library and including this CI workflow. Let's just quickly browse through this and see what's interesting.
Cool.
So it's a logging library for Angular, right? And it has 6 severity levels of logs. There's like info, debug, warning, trace, critical, and error, and I guess one more I can't remember right now. The unique approach of Lumberjack is it's a plugin-based logging library, so that let me find that in the slide here somewhere. You, as an application developer, you interact with the Lumberjack API. Behind the scenes, several Lumberjack log drivers can be activated and configured separately. For example, you can filter out some of the logging levels for your HTTP log driver, but show them all in the console log driver. And even by default, we have enabled so that Angular production mode disables 2 of the logging levels, like debug and trace, in production mode of Angular. But while you're in development mode, you'll see all the levels.
Right.
But that's configurable on a global level and even per log driver. So you could add them all to even in production for the console driver if you wanted, or even HTTP log driver. The 2 drivers here, they are the ones that come built into the library. The console log driver is for logging in the browser console. Everyone needs that, of course. The HTTP log driver is a symbol reference log driver that follows, sends some request to a backend. You can configure the endpoint and a retry strategy, and of course the filtering on the logging level. But it's more of like, so you can see how to implement your own driver, or we really want this to be an ecosystem. So we see here, we, for example, have someone from the community added an Azure Application Insights log driver, and there's another one for Firestore, the Google Cloud one. And it's relatively easy to implement a custom one for your project or your organization. It's implement an interface and provide it through for an injection token as a multi-provider. And then still as an application, you will be interacting with just the Lumberjack API, and you won't have any idea what's going on down here, except for in your configuration and, for example, your app module. So for us, we are here, the Lumberjack library, and the flow of dependencies, they all point towards Lumberjack. The application depends on Lumberjack. The drivers depend on Lumberjack. There's not an arrow going the other ways about the dependencies. But the control flow here is your application sends a message to Lumberjack, and it passes it on to all the active log drivers. There's the dependency flow. So still, when we add a third-party log driver or your own one, it will also depend on Lumberjack, not the other way around. So what we were trying to do to make this more beneficial is Lumberjack version 2 is the first, like version 1 was out for a while, but it was more getting something out there and getting some feedback. And then I joined, and we took some of Nacho's ideas about having this plugin-based architecture and structuring the logs in a way that we can also look into. And then we improved it so that it's more robust. It has built-in error handling. It can be configured on multiple levels, and we tried to build an make it easy to build an ecosystem around it. So if you want to build a third party or a custom log driver and share it with the community, we have a Git template repository that you can clone, and now you have CI and everything, and you can test across versions of Angular. And we also offer you to host your repo on the NgWorker GitHub organization and publish it under the NgWorker NPM organization, so that for visibility of your package.
Yeah.
And then we can focus on the core features and ask the community to maintain for whatever log provider you have. So that's what we wanted to do. And to make it even easier, version 2 of Lumberjack supports all these versions of Angular from 9 to 11 and most likely number 12 again. So your log driver can say, I'm compatible with Lumberjack 2 and maybe only Angular 11 because Azure Application Insight uses a specific version of TypeScript and so on. But at least you don't have to worry about which version of Lumberjack supports which version of Angular. So Lumberjack, you'll be using version 2.x for a long time, as long as we can maintain version 2. So we brought in all the breaking changes we needed, and we thought we were going to need for features in the future, and then we scoped it to a version 2 release. So yeah, that was kind of, but to do this, then we had this problem of how can we test across all these versions of Angular? How can we verify that our library is actually working with Angular 9.1 and 9.0 and so on? So we ended up creating this GitHub action that has really helped us out a lot, because within 6 minutes of a commit, you know exactly if you have a backwards incompatible syntax or API for TypeScript or for Angular versions and so on. And we figured we would mostly be using the dependency injection API of Angular, since we're a service library only right now. But even then, like, you would be surprised what's not backwards compatible, and the worst one is usually TypeScript. Yeah. And I could probably show I maintain a compatibility matrix for Angular and TypeScript and Node.js, just to give you an idea about the mess that is Angular dependency management. So first column here is the Angular CLI version, the supported Angular version, the supported Node.js versions, the supported TypeScript versions. So we're supporting all of these versions of Angular. So we have to, or sorry, not 12 yet, because it's not a release candidate. But that means we also have to test these versions of Node 10 and 12. And when we introduce support for Angular 12, we also have to test in Node.js 14 for the first time. And TypeScript, we have to test 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 4.0, 4.1, and in the next version 4.2. So that's a lot of combinations of dependency, and that was when we thought this is going to be a maintenance nightmare. So should we just release one version per major version of Angular like other libraries do?
That's what I see most people doing. It's almost unfortunate. It's really refreshing to see y'all's actually, where you kind of have it set to be evergreen. So
yeah, and I was impressed with seeing NgXS. They have version 3.x of their library, and they support all the way back to Angular 6.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but it was important to us since it's this plugin-based logging library. Otherwise, it would be an equal mess of which version of Angular, which version of Lumberjack, which version of a plugin for Lumberjack, and so on. So we wanted it all to make sense.
Well, also for your plugin creators, you don't want to make them post updates every 6 months, or their plugin becomes obsolete.
Exactly. It's small. It's still early on. I think it was maybe 1 or 2 months ago we released version 2 of Lumberjack, but we already have these 2 community-driven drivers, and we're continuing to add support for Angular versions.
Very cool.
And this Angular versions action has also gotten interest and can be can benefit other libraries in the Angular ecosystem. So that's really nice.
Very cool.
Let's see if there's something interesting here. This is what registration looks like. So there's a Lumberjack module. You add the Lumberjack module for root, and then you have imported module, an Angular module per driver. And this is what Santosh helped us doing, because this is probably how they do this. You can read the documentation, but you really just want to get going. So Santosh created the NgAdd schematic. So we'll see that in a minute in the demo. And then you get this basic configuration with Lumberjack and Lumberjack console driver, and you can add an option to get the HTTP driver as well. And on each level, you can see, I don't know if it's in these slides, but you can set the levels you want to filter into that that logging driver. And there are some default options, of course, we also discussed. And here, for HTTP, you can see how you can add more options.
Yeah. Well, this is a piece I love about Angular is like you've got your configuration here. One place to look at this stuff. And it's kind of standardized. If you come into this, you're not familiar with the project, you always think, okay, let me check out the app module. What's going on there? And then your code doesn't need to know about this in any way. You just inject that logger service and
yes.
Mess with configuration later. Can I ask, and I may be jumping the gun here a little bit, is there considerations in DI for like having domains built into your drivers as well, so you could filter on by feature?
It's something. It's a feature we discussed and we put in. It's not there yet. We have an idea how we could do it, but we wanted to see if there's any interest for the library at all before that.
Gotcha.
We added a feature that's not being used to support this in the future. So it's something we have in mind, and we might use some of the provider capabilities of Angular to be able to do that. But right now, you can have just one instance of each driver in your app.
Cool.
But I'm glad you asked, and
that's where I was going.
We can add it.
Yeah, I've seen some open source projects, especially where their logging by domain is like extremely helpful in terms of like debugging, especially CLIs. I think maybe not as helpful in like Angular applications, but I could definitely see a case where, as a developer, I'd want to turn on logging for one feature just to see maybe trace through sort of an issue. But yeah. Anyway, sorry to interrupt your presentation. Go ahead, Lars.
That's okay. So why another logging library? There's actually a few already, but they mostly focus on adding pretty colors to the browser console for some reason.
Pretty colors are nice, Lars.
That's not something we support out of the box. You would have to create a console driver yourself. But we focus more on supporting many log driver or log providers, like many different backends, even two at the same time, which some have a use case for as well.
Yeah.
But in the application, you won't have to change your application code except for this configuration, obviously. But all the logging code doesn't have to change if you want to filter out some levels, if you want to add another log driver, or change an option in that configuration. So that's really nice. Your application code is stable, despite changes being made to how the logs arrived at the destination.
Very cool.
The other unique thing about Lumberjack is we discussed this. Let's see.
Saw the forest is on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. We're Lumberjack, so we were in the forest domain.
Of course.
We're taking care of the environment. So yeah, we have monitors on forest fires.
Nice.
Yeah. So the log levels in development, they're all enabled. In production, debug and trace are disabled. Of course, you can override this using configuration, even per log driver. See, yeah, this is what it looks like to say, well, the verbose option will turn on all the levels. But here we're seeing how we could turn on only 2 of the levels for HTTP, for example. So that's what that looks like. You can also do it on the global level by adding the levels property to the Lumberjack module itself. So I want to get to a unique thing about Lumberjack. It's probably after this CI that we already discussed. Mm-hmm. It's what we call logger services. Let me just scroll through these. Yeah, here. So we're using the design pattern called builders, They're usually used for a lot for, or at least I use the most for test objects. When you have complex objects and you want to vary the different properties between tests.
Yeah.
But we found use for them in the library internally, and even as a consumer of the library, or for your tests, or if you're maybe if you're a log driver author, there's some use for them. So the first thing that was in version 1 was the Lumberjack service. It has just one method called log, and you pass in an object that has a level, a message, and then you need a created at timestamp. To maintain testability, you'll have to get that timestamp through the Lumberjack time service. If you don't care about that, you can just add new date to that property. But that's a bit of a mess to add all the time. We also see one of the optional properties here, the scope. And there's one called payload, where you can add whatever you want to a log object, which can be helpful for what you ship to the server, for example. So really wanted to add the building blocks for many scenarios. But it's up to the application developer and the log driver to support those extra properties. Mm-hmm. But here we introduced the Lumberjack log factory instead. So now we see that instead of creating an object, and especially the time, like the created at timestamp, that's managed now by this service, the Lumberjack log factory. Mm-hmm. So we can say create error log, for example. Then we add the message, which is required, and the scope property is optional, so it has this with scope method, and then we call build. And now you get that object literal, a Lumberjack log literal, that we can pass on to Lumberjack service. Mm-hmm. But we actually also, like, this is the low-level API, and that can be helpful for very dynamic scenarios, or if this is your way of a more classical approach of just, I just want to pass a message, but you need these other properties for it to be useful on the server side especially. But we have this concept of a logger service, and this is a more structured approach to logging, because all the log messages will be like gathered in a service and then referred to by the components or services or wherever you want to add your logging. So we have two base classes here. One of them is the Lumberjack logger class, and this one is the scoped Lumberjack logger class, because it adds this first property, the public scope property. So that scope string will be passed on to all the logs that are sent to Lumberjack. And then we create a message or a method per log we want to be able to pass on to Lumberjack. So there's a hero saved. This is a method that can be called, as we'll see in a minute. But to create this, now we're using this builder pattern again. So now we're saying we have a protected method on this base class called one per log level, create info logger, and then the message, and then build, and the scope will be included as well. You look like you have a question, Zach.
No, I was just saying this. So this is taking the same thing we were seeing in the previous one. We're just encapsulating it so that inside of our actual implementation, all we need to see is hero saved, essentially, right?
Yeah, and now this class has a dependency on Lumberjack, since it extends a base class. But now you'll see that now your application, like your services and components, they don't depend on Lumberjack. So this is essentially a facade in front of Lumberjack now, and you don't have to deal with the Lumberjack service. You only have to call your own service. You own this service, and you could technically create another, use another logging library through this service, and don't have to change the application code for components or services using this. So let's look at how it looks like to call this one. So this is, let's see. Here we're injecting this heroes logger service. As you can see, it's local code, so it's not a dependency directly on Lumberjack. Right. To this, this is another service, a hero service. To this service, it doesn't know about all the logging going on in the background. It just knows that it calls this method. So in the error and next value streams of this observable. We have this.logger.hero save failed, this.logger.hero saved. And now we have a structured way of seeing which logs will actually be sent throughout our application. We can have many logger services. We can divide them per feature, per domain, even per component or whatever.
Yeah.
And we can use the references feature of TypeScript to figure out where these logs are emitted from, and change, like this method call will look the same, even if we say change the message or some of the other properties. So we don't have to touch this service to create, to change something about the log being sent.
Very cool. Yeah. Looks awesome. My one thing would be, maybe if I were to do something like this, I probably want to do like an HTTP interceptor, but I get the point of the example. I imagine you could do the same kind of idea with your logger inside of there, right? So
yeah, for sure. Of course, these logs are specific to this hero, and you can even add parameters to the logger methods. So they can be parameterized if you want to, for example, say instead of the forest is on fire, you can say there's 2 forests on fire in Europe when this event happens.
On fire.
Yeah. So it's dynamic as well. We can probably make an easier API for that, but there's a way to do it currently, and we're happy with that for the initial version. I think this was all about all the interesting aspects of Lumberjack. So I'll quit this presentation. I mean, I could do a demo showing how to add it to, for example, the Tour of Heroes app I have locally, but we have other points to discuss. So
yeah, I want to make sure we get in the other things. Y'all been doing so much stuff. Gotta make sure it all fits. Do you have something we could do to talk about Spectacular a little bit? Let me talk about just the GitHub while we're looking at it, because I really like the logo here. That's very important when it comes to open source libraries. The shadow effect you had on this one, oh man, that hits perfect.
Nice. Well, we were happy to have the help of a designer called Felipe Zambrano. Nacho used to work with him, and he created the logos for both Lumberjack and Spectacular. And as you can see, they have similarities. And
well, it's nice. It gives you all a brand. Like this is next one you come out with. Maybe you'll put some other color around the edge, have the white, and then the nice logo, and we'll know that's those NgWorkers again.
So interestingly about this logo, I want it to be significantly different from Spectator because the names are similar. But I like the name so much, I came up with it. I liked it so much that it had to be that name, even though it was similar to Spectator, which is a related library. Like it's also for Angular testing.
Yeah. I saw this. I was like, Spec. Okay, this has got to be about testing. I looked into it a little bit. So Spectacular. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Offers test harnesses for Angular applications and libraries. And this seems cool, but I want to hear from y'all what a test harness is, because I'm not sure. I have assumptions about what that means. I'm not. My understanding is not solid though.
So does anything have anything to add before I start presenting again?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Santosh and Sergen. I feel like Lars is getting all the camera time, but y'all are welcome to join in.
He's working. He's the one who's working on all the stuff. So
cool. Well, we'll get you in towards after this one, Sergen, because I'm anxious to talk about tables. So let's do that.
I mean, when we have not time, so we can make a separate session.
Yeah.
For the table. So it's totally fine for me. So Lumberjack and Spectacular is also important libraries. So next time we can talk about the table.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And I'm totally fine with that. Everything is fine.
Cool. Well, thanks.
Santosh, do you have anything to add about testing?
So I keep saying this, right? So whenever someone asks me about anything about testing, I just tell them, okay, there's a guy called Lars. Just go ahead and contact him.
Very nice. Very nice. But Shy Rustic had some interesting stuff on tests up a while ago. Some cool content. His stuff is always really entertaining. So
Yeah,
I
sure.
think the approach is always solid. But I feel like testing is just so nebulous at the end of the day, and it looks like you're bringing order to that chaos in this slide here, Lars. So I'll let you take it from here.
So I've had the interest of automated testing for a while, and today I work at a company that specializes in continuous delivery and continuous deployment for our software projects. So of course, automated testing is a very important part of that. So that fits well together. Testing, like in general, it's much more mainstream today, like automated testing, than it was like even a few years ago. 2 or 3 years ago, you could more often join a company or a project where there were no automated tests or very bad ones. Today, it's more accepted and more of the de facto standard that you have to have some sort of automated testing. So that's nice. When I started blogging also like 3 years ago, and once I started writing about automated testing, which was my favorite subject, I got not as good reading statistics. So I was kind of bummed out by that there were not as many people interested in this, but that seems to have changed since, because this slide deck is 100 slides, so we won't do all of them. It's a 2.5 hour session I did on Santosh's show, Tech Talks with Santosh, just on Angular testing based on some community questions. So that was really nice, and it's one of your most popular shows, I believe.
It's very cool.
So nice. I'm very happy to see that increasing interest in automated testing.
Yeah, my first job, there was definitely a sense that writing automated tests was a waste of time, which I subscribed to at the beginning. And then I got to points with my own projects where things just were unmaintainably, what's the right word? Crappy. Like, it was just impossible to add new features because as you add something, so many things could have broke, and at least 1 or 2 of them did. It was hard to figure out which one. And getting to the point, I found myself being like, man, it would be nice if I could just hit a button and figure out which of the ones I broke. And it's almost like there's an industry crafted solution to that. So, yeah.
Well, I'm using Wallaby for that. It's a extension for example, for VS Code that adds inline output of tests. That's the basic feature. It has a lot of features.
Oh, that's cool.
And that way you can point in one line of the code and say jump to failing tests.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know. I think on VS Code there's some stuff out of the box now. Like whenever I write a Jest test, I notice I have the run and debug.
Yeah, there's one for Jest, yes, and I think it's included in with NX. It recommends that extension. If you're using Jest, there's a free extension. However, Wallaby is a paid product and supports all the testing frameworks, and it's just really valuable. It also has a free open source license, so that's nice.
Very cool. Well, this is the kind of stuff, like, I go back a few years in my career, and they had this kind of stuff in JUnit, right? Like with way back when. What was the name of that IDE? Eclipse.
Oh.
I remember having those that would just run for it was antiquated, but it was the exact tool you wanted for being able to test this kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you're coming from other environments like the Java ecosystem and .NET, you'll be surprised by like the amount of stuff going on in the JavaScript ecosystem, but also like how far behind we are on good tooling for some of these things. And I think what's his name? I forgot it right now, but he created Striker, the Striker mutation testing library for JavaScript. And he says it's probably because we're missing a protocol for test runners and test execution in JavaScript. So each framework has to invent his own. His library Striker has to hook into all these different test frameworks, and every time he has to create a new plugin or new adapters to support that. Mutation testing, that's a whole different chapter. I have an episode of the Deep Dive podcast on YouTube where we talk about Striker, the fundamentals of that.
Striker is testing the test cases which are not covered by the developer, right?
It's a lot more than that. That's the simple use case that says this is not good enough. You don't have it covered by tests. But even when you have it covered by tests, it's kind of verifying the quality of your tests, because it will change the source code, and if your tests don't break, you don't have proper tests. That's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah.
Super interesting. If you're interested in testing, you should check that out, and you can listen to this podcast episode with, I forgot his name unfortunately right now. I'm very sorry about that. It's Nicholas Jansen.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely Jansen. What's his first name? Whatever. He's a very nice guy, and this is an amazing product, open source.
Very cool.
I even contributed a little to the Angular portion of it.
Yeah, well, very cool. Yeah, we'll go back to yours.
Yeah. So out of this 100-slide deck, I'll try to set the background for what's testing like in Angular, and then where does something like Spectacular has its place. So we have all these types of Angular tests. On the right-hand side, we see the classical pyramid, the testing pyramid, where at the top you'll have usually, or that was the recommendation back in the time, have a few end-to-end tests because they're expensive to implement and expensive to maintain, and especially expensive to run because they are a lot slower than unit tests and integration tests. So at the top you have the slowest one, at the bottom you have the fastest ones that are the cheapest to implement, the fastest to run. But then, like, what gives you the most value? Well, they offer different things because they test on different scopes, on different levels of abstraction in your application. So end-to-end tests can verify something that unit tests can't verify, but it also goes the other way around. Unit test is more granular. And in Angular, we have the same types, of course, but then we have something like component tests as well. And for component tests, there's even different types. And add to that, we also have not only in Angular, but we also have visual regression tests and snapshot tests. So let's look at these types, what it looks like. This is a sample application from the Two of Heroes, my model view presenter variant of that code base, where we add a container component and a presenter service to the presentational heroes component. So we have the backend, then a hero service, a container component, a presentational component, a presentational service, and the DOM that the user sees. So in an end-to-end test, we might test everything of this, including the backend, or we might stop out the backend using a mock for the backend, for example. In an isolated component test, we would test, for example, the container component, but test it as a class, not through compilation and the test bed and all of that. In a shallow component test, we might test just one UI component or presentational component, including the DOM and the interactions on the DOM, and maybe its service as well. In an integrated component test, we'll include 2 or more components in the same test. And again, this allows us to verify more things because the scope is less narrow. And now we can do an integration test where we also include the hero service, but stop out the backend. This is similar to the end-to-end test with a stop backend, but we are not starting out up the whole application. Like, we're still just making an Angular environment for only these classes and testing all of that in a single test case or a few. And we can add a unit test on the hero service class and stop everything else out. That's why they're grayed out. And for the heroes presenter, which is just a service, so we can do the same thing and we don't have to worry about a DOM or Angular components or anything like that. So we can focus just on the business logic that this encapsulates. So let me switch out to what does all of this look like. And like the problem with Angular is we also have a lot of Angular specific tests. We have Angular tests for services, for providers, for injection tokens, application hooks, Angular modules. There's even several types depending on the Angular module type. Angular pipes, directives, there are several directives. Components, there's many types of components. Route guards, there's many types of route guards. There's route resolvers. There's dependencies, components, directives, Angular pipes, Angular modules. You use the test bed for that. There's component tests, and it usually goes like this. And look at all that code, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first smell. Like we need something. Like we need less boilerplate, right? So yeah. That's how libraries like Spectacular and Spectator, and there's like 10, 15 different Angular testing libraries, just where the primary reason for them is less boilerplate, because the test bed, while it's nice because it's specific to Angular, it also adds a whole lot of setup code, and a lot of it is specific to Angular and DI in Angular and the change detection in Angular. And this is one of the simplest tests you can do. This is a component with a service, basically. But and then we move on to
spies. Sorry, you're creating your own spies in here just to pass in. So you are isolating down to the component.
Yeah, this is a shallow, this is an integrated component test, because we have both the dashboard and the dashboard hero component, and then we're stubbing out the router and the hero service with a spy. So from that diagram before, we can imagine that we have these two classes, the dashboard component, dashboard hero component. Everything else doesn't exist in this test environment, except for the DOM. This is this is integrated with the test bed. So we do create the component through the test bed. So we do have a DOM in this test that we can interact with, and that's what we're doing in the actual test case in the bottom, where we're seeing the number of heroes being rendered and the number of dashboard hero components being rendered. So this is one of the most simple tests you can do, component test in Angular, and look at all of this, right? And then we move on to, now you want to, these are the more advanced scenarios. I just show one example to give you an idea about the level of complexity once you go past a few components and you start to test on the feature level. That's what I know you love end-to-end test, Zach, so that's what you're used to. Just I want to test the whole thing.
I like end-to-end tests, especially with NX, where you can actually like mock out the back end easily, right? But I also like the kind of test you showed previously, where you just isolate the one thing. I think end-to-end tests are helpful for letting you know you effed up. I think unit tests are like helpful for making sure you built what you meant to build, which has value. I don't know. We've had this discussion before, Lars. I don't know how valuable those tests are in terms of future-proofing your app. In terms of like, as soon as you make a change to that, the whole test seems smooth to me. So I don't know.
Yeah. The end-to-end tests, they don't really help you with the design of the code. So and they don't help you, like they'll tell you something's wrong, but they won't tell you where something is wrong or how to fix it. So they're testing at different levels, and both are useful. And it's not like you should do only one. Of course, you can do both, but the important thing is knowing when to use what. Which value does each type of test provide you? And once you're familiar with the different types of testing, you'll get a better idea about which one to use. But now I wanted to show once you add routing to the mix, it becomes even more complex. But that's actually where the component tests become really useful in the test bed, because now you can test not only across a single part of the screen, now you can test the whole application without spinning up an app, so it's actually faster than end-to-end test, but with some of the same benefits. I wanted to be able to test like a whole feature across multiple routes and navigation and all that, similar to an end-to-end test, but with the speed of the test bed and with some of the flexibility that the test bed can bring, because I can mock out on the service level rather than just on the backend level, and that's more convenient sometimes, and it's faster than the end-to-end test. So now we have a test case here. We are testing the hero. Sorry, there's a lot of code and I did that syntax highlighting. Sorry for that. But let's see. Now we add this router testing module, and we say we want to have these routes that we can navigate to in our tests in this test suite. We have the heroes and an ID route. That's just a stubbed out component. And the reason for that is we want to click on one on the actual dashboard component, and we want to verify that we end up on this route. That's the purpose of this particular test case we're going through. But this router testing module is actually pretty complicated to get right, and we have to add a bunch of helper component classes, and we have to get this configuration just right.
Yep. But at your last test, may I just point out, you were actually mocking with the router with your own stub.
Right.
On navigate by URL. You're just testing to make sure that got hit. It doesn't give you that much confidence. Like, that's what I was talking about. You built what you meant to build, but here's where I would use an end-to-end test normally to kind of make sure, do I actually go to the route I meant to? So this is a way of being able to get that confidence without the cost of spinning up the whole app.
All the router and related classes and interfaces, they are really tough to stub out.
And also you're isolating it down to just the router here. Whereas any end-to-end test I'd write would probably be, I know something went wrong and know the step, but I want to know where in the code that happens. So, yeah.
So I wrote a whole article series about testing with the router testing module because it's barely mentioned in the Angular documentation. So I want to get into that.
Well, it seems like you put a lot of work into it. Like, it's pretty impressive what all it can do.
Yeah, for sure. But it's a shame that it's not really covered in articles or in the documentation. So I wanted to learn everything about it, and my purpose was I want to integration test without end-to-end. Like, I want to test the whole feature of an Angular application without end-to-end tests. So yeah, that's what we ended up doing. This is again one of the simpler examples because we set up this notice that it's the dashboard module, it's not the dashboard component. So this dashboard modules comes with its own routes, and by doing it this way, it's similar to lazy loading. Even though in this test it's not lazy loaded, but it'll work in exactly the same way as the real application. So, and that's kind of what I wanted to get to. I want to test this dashboard module. Like, that's all I want to say actually with all of this setup. I want to test the dashboard module, and with all this setup out of the way, and now I can navigate to the dashboard route, and now I'm ready to run an actual test, and that should come up in one of the next ones here. Let's see. Yeah, here we have an actual test case for that. It navigates to hero details when a hero is clicked. So we have this dashboard component showing the top heroes. So we go for the dashboard hero component, which we didn't mention in the test setup. We just mentioned the dashboard module. And now we want to find this hero button in this list of heroes on the dashboard. Then we click it, and let's see. Now I'm verifying that I was routed to heroes / the ID of that hero I clicked in the dashboard. So now we're spanning many. There can be many components here. I'm interested in the hero link in the dashboard here, and I'm interested in testing that once we click that on the dashboard, we end up on the hero's route for that hero's details. Of course, this is one of the simpler use cases. You can do a lot of interesting stuff. What I really want to be able to do is, you click this, you end up here. I actually integration tested. There's a router tutorial on Angular.io that kind of expands the Tour of Heroes example app. So I wanted to be able to integration test that, like going through everything. Like, you click this hero, or it's a crisis. In that case, it's a crisis center module. You click a crisis, you change its title, you save it, and then there's a prompt. Do you want to cancel or save those changes? So it goes through all of that and goes through the scenarios. What if you click the cancel button? What happens then? What if you click OK? Where do you end up, and what do you see now on the screen? That's a really complex scenario, but it's like in testing. But in real life, like that's a simple use case, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to test all of that, but using the test bed and the router testing module. That's how I ended up exploring all of this stuff. And when I finally figured out how to configure the router testing module for all of this, I was looking into, well, how can I encapsulate this, and how can I make it easier to get right?
Yeah.
And that ended up like drafting the first feature of Spectacular, the integration testing library for Angular. So all of this becomes simpler with Spectacular. Like there's a demo, there's a few slides about Spectacular here. It has more features than just integration testing. I don't know if we can do it also. I'll just skip to that section, and we can at least look at the integration testing.
Well, just to call out the time, we're over by a little bit. I'm fine to keep going, but okay. I want to respect y'all's time, Santosh and Sergey. I know it's probably later for y'all too, and yeah, it seems a bit late, Lars, to be talking. So yeah, don't want to keep you if you don't want to be here, but I'm interested in this stuff, so I'm good to keep going, Lars.
Me too. It's not too late, so I'm near to Lars, so we are really close to each. Yeah.
Nice.
Santosh, how are you doing? It's in the middle of the night.
I know. I feel bad, man.
Yeah, it's around 12.
Yeah. Well, don't feel like you guys stick around if you don't want to, Santosh.
I'll be okay. I'll be here for like next 5 minutes because I'm
okay. Cool.
Right now.
Cool. Thanks, man. All right.
So this was actually one of the community questions from Ajit, who's an Angular collaborator. And he's asking the classical question: how do you reduce the test boilerplate and the Angular boilerplate for tests? And look at all these different libraries. They all, like, part of their reason for being created is reducing that boilerplate. And these are the active libraries. There's even some dead, unmaintained libraries out there as well.
I imagine so. Yeah. The Angular CDK one, especially, it piqued my interest. I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but seeing them,
we are using it heavily, the CDK component test harnesses in our company.
So the plan for Spectacular is to integrate with both the component test harnesses and the Angular testing libraries for the integration test feature, like what we just saw, but the Spectacular version of that. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel about interacting with the DOM and so on. The Angular testing library is great for that. That's like closer to end-to-end tests. And it builds on top of the DOM testing library by Kent C. Dodds, and he has a React testing library as well. But the Angular testing library is maintained by Tim DeSchreier from the NgWorkers team.
Ooh,
and so we want to integrate with these two, and the library is built so that it's possible. And on the roadmap is adding examples of how to do it to the documentation.
Very cool.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of other interesting things, and we already mentioned Spectator at the bottom from the NgNeat suite of open source projects, and now Spectacular of NgWorkers. And yeah, there was even a community request to talk about Spectacular because I mentioned it before. So I hurried up and made a presentation here, and since then we released the library, and I'm using it at work, and there's a few people using it. So yeah, it's still in 0.2 because we want to integration and test it with many versions of Angular, like we do with Lumberjack before version 1.0. So right now it's only verified to be working with Angular 11. It probably works with other versions, but we don't have the confidence to say that yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it has these 3 APIs in the initial version. The application testing API, which is for application hooks, like bootstrap listeners and application initializers.
Okay.
They have actually proven pretty difficult to test, and there's not a built-in way of integration testing them with Angular. So that's a unique feature of Spectacular. I haven't seen that in other testing libraries.
Yeah.
Then
Well, so
there's
in my testing, when I do the unit tests, Lars, I typically do like that first example you showed, where whenever possible, I'll just create an object that has the minimum methods on it to just make sure I don't get like the undefined error, and I can at my leisure just like mock one out per test. Like that's really nice. Where that starts to fall down is when you have something like adding an event listener or adding some callback listener, where you like there's still a trick of figuring out your own mechanism to register those callbacks and then like actually call them and all that kind of stuff. I imagine that's similar to what you're doing with the hooks on the ng Bootstrap. There is like standardizing a way around the event listeners. Is that the idea there?
Well, if I understand what you're saying, you should definitely look into Spectator. It has a host component Spectator class for making that easier, because that's normally what you would do. You would add a host component for that test, so that you can add bindings to your component, both event and property bindings. Or if it's like in the DOM, then you have to know how to do it with the testbed. Of course, testbed has ways to setting that up as well.
Gotcha. Cool.
So we have these 3 APIs. The feature testing is what we saw before, the testbed version of that. And I wanted to make it easier to set up all that configuration of router testing module and testbed and so on. And the pipe testing API is for integration testing and Angular pipe rather than unit testing it as a class. So it'll actually render to a template, and you can read what's rendered in the template. You can change the value and so on. So it's a little convenience testing harness for that. And on the roadmap is also a testing harness for container components. And so, but these 3 are here, and they should be stable. This is what we just said: the application initializer test and bootstrap listener test, configuration Angular module test. There's a simple example here of create application harness, provide the bootstrap listener, and then in the next step, in the final step here, you can verify that some side effect was triggered by that. This is a very simple one, and it turned out that I forgot about asynchronous bootstrap listeners, so I had to make a breaking change to make the create application harness function async. So it returns a promise now to handle asynchronous bootstrap listeners, which is most of them are. Not that bootstrap listeners are common, but application initializers, that was the same thing. They are tested through the same API as this one, the application harness. I don't have an example of that, but it's the same thing. You provide it, or you import a module that provides them, and you can use this application harness to test that. It will trigger the bootstrap and application initialization events behind the scenes, so that it's being run properly. That was the application harness. Now the feature testing harness. And like I said, it's trying to bridge the gap between component test and end-to-end test. So I wanted the best of both worlds, the speed and the utilities of testbed, but the test as a user approach of end-to-end testing frameworks. And I wanted, Santosh, it's very late for you.
Thanks so much for coming, Santosh. It was awesome having you on a guest.
Thanks for inviting, Jack. See you soon. Bye. Good night.
See you.
See you, Santosh. Okay, so this will be another 5-10 minutes, Zach.
Sure, I'm good for it.
Slides. Okay. Serkan, you're good as well? Great. Okay. So, as part of
I'm also interested to listen that. So we are working together on NgWorkers, ES workers, but sometimes you didn't really know what the other one is doing. So you see all the commits, but it's also interested for me. So it's fine.
So we do a code review for each other, even when we're working on different packages in our repos. So Serkan helped me shape the API for this one so that it's most convenient. So that was helpful. Awesome. And of course, Santosh and Nacho also gave feedback for this. So that's really nice. It ended up in a great place. So one of the goals here is also to be able to integrate with the Angular CDK component harnesses and the Angular testing library. I just need to add some docs for that, but it should be possible so that you can, like the Spectacular wraps all this interaction with the router testing module and the router of Angular and the location service of Angular, and it adds some convenience APIs on top of that for interacting with them, but it doesn't add any convenience for interacting with the DOM and or like clicking things and reading things. But that's where the other libraries come into the picture. So like integrating those two, that would be like that should give some benefit as well in the end. So the feature test harness is used to test routed feature modules, like a whole module with many different components and services and so on, and what we call shell modules, a pattern from now on. NX and Nacho and I came up with a pattern called composite shell libraries and modules. So there's a link in this presentation for that. So it kind of hides all the way the boilerplate of testbed and the router testing module and all of that. So here, this is the example. We call the create feature harness. We get a harness data structure back.
Nice.
And that has the router and the location service, or some modified versions of them, slightly modified for convenience. So that in the second highlight here, you can see we call harness.router.navigate by URL. And in the top, we have the crisis center module of the Tour of Heroes routing tutorial. That's our testing target. Like, we want to test this module, and that's all we should need to tell Spectacular. There's also a path involved, and we should make that the same as the application in case we are spanning across multiple modules, which
when you give the feature path here, is this the URL path? Is this the
exactly that would be like the path you use to lazy load it, for example, in the app. But then in the next steps here, we see how we use the tilde to kind of say that means crisis center. So rather than having to repeat that across all the test cases, you can say I want to navigate relatively in that feature module to its details route. And with the location service of Angular, that's also part of the harness here. We can.
So in terms of your harness, you'd likely set up the harness in your before each, because you want a fresh one each time, or would this be something you set once?
I initially tried to come up with a version where I could do it once, but that was an entirely different API, and Serkan didn't like it, so I changed it to this one that's easier on the eyes, easier to figure out and reason about. The other one was more closely to designed like the test bed, but people don't like the test bed, so so this one should be easier. It looks more like Spectator actually.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I've learned to work with the test bed to the point where I'm like all right with it, right? But it's definitely like comparing what you've got here on screen. Like this would be a test right here. Before each harness equals that test. It navigates the detail. I guess this would be like the details route exists on the module, right? So you navigate to that URL, check the URL, check their location, make sure it includes the details.
I mean, this test in its own doesn't really add any value. you would replace either the second highlight or the third highlight. Like you would click a button like we saw before in the vanilla Java Angular testbed example. You click a button and then see you ended up on the hero details for this particular hero, right? Or you would navigate to details, and then you would click something or fill out this form control and see what's now rendered and so on. But you were right in your original question that you would put the create feature harness in a before each probably, or a test wrapper. Like some people also create special setup functions that you call in each test case rather than in the before each, because then you can vary the parameters used to set up the state for this test case.
Right.
Yeah, but anyways, this is basically what the three things that the Spectacular feature testing API brings you. It's a convenient setup of testbed and router testing module. You pass it the module you want to work with, you want to base your test on, and the path used to load that module in your build application. And then you have the router and the location services slightly modified. They can still use, like you can still pass the full route, like crisis center / details, but you can also use this tilde in both the services to say relative to the crisis center path I want to navigate, or I want to know if I navigated into this this sub route.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, you also get like harness inject, like testbed inject. So now we can pull out the real router service here that's unmodified. And in the second highlight, you see how that would be called, like / crisis center / details. And when you call the modified location service, you can still see that you get this. You can use the tilde to, rather than having to mention / crisis center again.
Right.
Works the other way around as well. Here's the unmodified location service.
Oh, nice.
So you use the modified router to say tilde / details, and now the real unmodified location service will show you're at the / crisis center / details. So this was really simplistic view on it. Let's see. Yeah, I guess we have. Yeah, this is also from the crisis center. This is a more realistic test case where we're creating a harness. There's some other setup here. We are creating a fake dialog service, and this UI variable that we see here, that's some helper utilities for interacting with the DOM that I created for testing Spectacular. But I didn't want to add it to the public API of the library. I wanted to be able to integrate with the other libraries instead. But to make it more convenient for testing Spectacular itself, it creates a set of utilities by passing in the component fixture. And we'll see how they are used in a second. But yeah, this is what you were asking about. We have a shared variable called harness, has the type of Spectacular feature harness. And in the before each hook, you create that feature harness, pass it the module, the path of the module, and whatever you might want to stop. And this is where it differs conceptually from an end-to-end test, because you can stub out individual services, rather than a backend or the local storage or something like that, the native APIs, right? So here, let's see. Yeah, like I said, they're not included in Spectacular, but you should use a library that gives you something similar.
Yeah.
So here I have a few more helpers for this feature, testing this feature. Expect crisis to be selected. That tells you where you're at in the application. If you're on the dashboard of this crisis center with a specific one selected, but you pass it a crisis, and then it encapsulate this interacting with the DOM, uses this user interaction, get text the element with that selector, and you expect it to be the ID and the name of this crisis, because that's how this implementation is in this Tour of Heroes router tutorial.
Yeah.
Another one here.
Just to call something out here, though,
Yep.
I think this is a really good example of using functions instead of comments. Because like I often see stuff like what you have on like the third line there, that expect.
Yeah.
I see a lot of times you see that line, but you have the comment above it to explain what it does. And I like this much better because this is not only can you reuse it across your entire test suite now,
exactly.
but it makes more sense. And I've learned not to trust comments too, just because there's signposts people leave that don't tend to get updated. Putting it into a function like this, you're kind of forcing people to update it if they want to change it. So, yeah,
and you're completely right. Both because this is just not noise. If you see this in a test, what does this mean? Why am I testing a selected element and some name? Because you want to see where you're at in the application after clicking some button or doing some interaction. And I think one is similar, right? You're expecting to be at the Crisis Center homepage.
Yep. At the end of the day, we're writing code for humans, I think. And it just happens to be the fact that there's a compiler on the other side doing this stuff. We've got to make sure when we write stuff, it's even for ourselves, like our future selves. If I looked at that line, I'd be like, okay, UI get text, okay. But just to see that line instead.
And it would be even worse without the UI helper, because then you would have the raw testbed, debugger element, and all of that in query. And
very cool.
So this is again about the setup. So just to put up the context of the test case. And now this is actually a pretty complicated test suite, and I just pulled out one of the test cases down here. But as you can see, it's part of two groups, or actually 3, 4, 5 layers of groups of tests, because that's what you end up doing when you're integration testing a whole feature, like all the user flows, all the user actions in that feature. So we have it before each up here. It navigates to the crisis details for specific crisis. So you can see here we have the Tour of Heroes, the Crisis Center integration tests. This is the crisis detail page test suite. And in this scenario, we're editing a crisis name. So we're navigating to that crisis, and then we're entering a new crisis name into the input field here. And now in this scenario, we're canceling the change. We're saying go back, and we don't want to change that's the question. Do we want to discard the changes, or, I didn't mean to navigate away? So let's see here. I guess this one is backwards. It should have said okay, because I wanted to discard changes. Yeah. So I this example, I made it backwards. In the actual test suite, it says okay. I want to click the OK button. No. Yeah. This is actually right. This is the component has a button that says cancel to go back.
You click cancel, and then it asks you, are you sure? And you click OK. Got it.
Yeah. And this, in the real app, this is actually the confirm JavaScript API that's called. But the Angular team encapsulated that between a dialog service. That's why I could switch it out here with a fake dialog service, and then I can, because in one of these testbed, you don't have the DOM, you don't have you cannot interact with a confirm button, so it would just block your tests if the confirm function was called, right?
Yeah.
So I switched that out with a fake implementation, and now I can say, yeah, okay to that. I want to discard the unsafe changes.
Yeah.
And then finally, what happens when we do that? It navigates to the Crisis Center homepage with the crisis selected. And that's where our helper comes into the picture here. So this test case is just these two. We're at the homepage. We have this crisis selected. After all of these steps, the individual steps here, that's what happens. Of course, there's a bunch of other related tests, but this is the power of what you can do. Like this, you could use an end-to-end test for this. But the interesting thing is here that you can do that with the test bed if you know how to set it all up right, and that's the tricky part that I wanted to like generalize with Spectacular.
Yeah, it's very cool. Very cool.
Because notice there's nothing about the test bed. There's nothing about a component here. I'm interacting with the DOM.
Well, so in this example, we never see the harness get initialized. Would this be in a before each at the top level?
Yeah, we guess we saw that before here.
Oh, okay, it's the same one. Same. Got it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we create our harness, but that's always the same. So that's in our top level before each, and then we kind of crawl down into the nesting to figure out the before eaches for our other scenarios. So. Cool.
Yeah, this is reused across many tests in this Crisis Center integration test suite.
Mm-hmm.
And Spectacular allows us to just say we want to test this module, and we have to pass it this path, because some other components might have that path hard-coded. And in particular, this routing tutorial does have that. So, and usually that's the case. Like routes, Angular URLs are sprinkled out through a lot of component templates, so they're hard-coded in many places. Mm-hmm. So if you were to, you could, using the test bed, use a different path, but that would most likely break some tests when you test on this level, like click a button and you can't control which URL it uses to navigate to the next spot in the application. I think this was it for Spectacular. There was this pipe testing. That's a pretty simple one, so could look at that as well. We create a pipe harness. This is the pipe we want to test. Its pipe name, and an initial value, which is optional. So this capitalized pipe, what does it do? It capitalizes every word of the text. So lowercase Mr. Potato Head becomes title case Mr. Potato Head. And let's even change the value to say Miss Potato Head in lowercase and test that now the text rendered in the component is Miss Potato Head.
That's kind of cool.
So Spectacular will set up the host component.
So this is actually putting stuff into the DOM and then all behind the scenes, all of those. That's awesome. That's awesome. Pipes are kind of like, I'm almost not sure if I would do this. It's definitely cool that you're doing this, but what's the method on the pipes class that always comes out?
Transform.
Transform. That's right. Yeah. Something about me likes just calling that, like calling it a day at that point, because it's kind of saying, okay, I trust Angular change detection to do the right thing, right? So I don't know. This is cool too.
Well, let me show you an example.
Let's see
where that argument kind of falls to the ground, in my opinion.
Is it for non-pure pipes you're talking?
Well, I have as an example in the Spectacular test suite, I'm testing the common pipes. So let's see, they're probably here somewhere. Common pipes. So here we're seeing more complex examples than just passing a simple value, because we want to test how the pipe is being used. Like passing.
That is helpful.
Not just one
size.
Yeah, we're using the number pipe from Angular, and we're passing in a second parameter, and the same for like other. There's other pipes here. The currency pipe, currency, percentage.
Yeah.
So,
in my opinion, it's kind of unintuitive how these parameters get passed into the pipe.
Yeah.
So this is kind of cool to see.
Yeah, because you could easily mess that up when implementing the pipe. If you don't of course, if you know, it'll always act the same. So if you put the parameter or the arguments in right, it'll work. But with this API, you can test it in a component very convenient.
The way you would use
value, probably you can even test. You can change the template in the test, or you can just reuse the template across test cases. But of course, if you want to vary the parameters, you have to either change the template or you have to have multiple properties, which is not supported in this testing harness in particular.
I'm questioning myself now, Lars. Maybe Sirkin, maybe you know this too. Can you bind inside of the? I imagine you can inside of the parameters on the other side of that colon.
Yeah, you can. You can. Okay. That could make sense for the comment pipes if you wanted, for example, a dynamic locale or dynamic currency, whatever that could change throughout the session lifetime.
That's cool. I feel like maybe I need to give pipes more respect sometimes. I don't know. I always say the obvious case for pipes is in contracting work. You see people calling the functions inside of their template, and it's always like, no, don't do that. You definitely want the pipe there. But it always seems like a kind of painful to get those pipes in. It's a class, so it needs its own file. You need to declare it inside your module. You need to do all that setup. It seems to me you might as well just write an observable at some point, and just use an operator to do whatever transformation you would do inside of just like a map operator. But
yeah, but if you're not on top of optimizing your change detection, pipes can help with that on a more granular level.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so this was the final API part of this initial version of Spectacular. There's the roadmap, and it has been released now. It's on version 0.2.
Cool.
So the roadmap is verified cross-version compatibility with Angular. That's what I want before version 1.0. We have Lumberjack, and then integrating with these other libraries, and then we'll add the container component test harness.
Very cool.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to all of this. This was my live stream again. Angular After Dark.
Well, now I don't have to go watch it, right?
Yeah.
I see. Your logo.
The reason here is the concept is I'm a grumpy old Angular developer up too late, way too late, doing random Angular stuff and ranting about various technologies just for the fun of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I've had this idea I've been kicking around for a long time about similar like a harness, but I'm not sure it would be the harness in the same way. It would be more like taking a module and not even just testing it in a harness, but even just serving it as a harness. Like we call them NG modules. It seems like they ought to be properly modular to the point where I mess around with this in NX sometimes. Sometimes just create a app specifically for the purpose of loading in that library and mock everything else out. Like use the providers, just throw in some objects there that you can maybe manage with a form if you wanted to, kind of thing. So you have like something off to the side you're managing that stuff with. But yeah, it's something I've been intrigued by. But of course, I'm going at it with the idea of I'm going to create this app so I can run Cypress against it, so I can do my expensive end-to-end test. But yeah, I don't know. I like that. The cost of it doesn't seem that steep to me, but I don't know. Yeah, I'll see if I can push that any further. But I feel like there's something there. Anyways, thanks so much, Lars and Shirkin for coming on and showing off this stuff. More importantly, though, thanks for the stuff you do to the community. I asked y'all earlier, how can we support you? It's because y'all are doing I think really important work, really helping out the community in terms of the tools you're doing and the content y'all are doing. And just wanted to say I appreciate y'all and what y'all do. And I know sometimes it doesn't feel like there's much gratitude out there, so I want to make sure y'all at least get some here. So thanks for all the work y'all do, and we see it. We appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Stag. Thank you very much.
Of course, dude.
You had one last question in the agenda here. What's next for NgWorkers?
Yeah.
And I don't know if Serkan is capable of doing a 2-minute pitch for the Spreadsheet API for NgWorker, but give it a shot, maybe.
Yeah. Give us a teaser for the next time I get you on.
Something. Let me.
He's really he's very proud of this, and it's a huge.
Well, if it's a spreadsheet, it sounds like two of my favorite things, which is
tables. It's like Excel Lite. I don't know. Can you see something?
Yeah.
Let me just a second. Oops. Sorry. I have to start it.
So like you got the idea right away just from the name of the sack, so that's good.
Yeah. So sorry, my wife is leaving out the room. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Angular material library, and I don't want to invent the wheel. So this is my my philosophy. So I don't like to invent, or I don't like to write things again. So I'm of the opinion. So when you have the Angular material table, then we can write directives or plugins, which makes, for example, the table to a spreadsheet. So okay, it's started. So let me show how it looks. Let me explain. So this is a Angular material library component. So you know that. You know that.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Could you make the text a little bit bigger?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I was trying to say it and I was on mute. But yeah, I'm very familiar with this.
Yeah,
more than any man should be.
Yeah, this is a material table, so the standard table, and
some of those directives I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, and the developer who like to use our spreadsheet, he should be with few lines of code. He should make a material table to a spreadsheet. So as you can see, you just put mat spreadsheet to the table, and then you can say, okay, this mat header cell should be draggable, and this mat cell should be editable, and that's it. So with few configuration. With few configuration, you can make the mat table to a spreadsheet. How it looks. So you see, this is an example table. So what you can do is you can click on it, and then you can navigate with the arrow keys. So this is the third thing. As you can navigate with the enter. So when I tap enter or shift enter, it go back. You can use the tab or shift tab, and like in Excel, you can write something if you want.
Can you do formulas?
Huh? No, not formulas. Okay. You can write something, and then you can leave the cell by using the arrow keys. So, or like in Excel, when you make double click, then you can use also the arrow keys here. So it's and what you also can do is you can move this around. This is you can as you can see, the state will be hold. Yeah.
Is that part of the mat drag? Was that part of Angular material, or is that yours?
No. Can you repeat it again, please?
Dragging the header there.
I am not writing things by myself. So for that case, this is a CDK header drag. So I can show a little bit. Just a second. 1 second. Here. So this is a CDK drop list.
Okay.
So in again.
It's a CDK drop list, but it works directly with the table. So it's
yeah. Could you zoom in so we could see the text?
Hmm?
Could you zoom in some more to make the text larger?
Yeah.
We can't see it at the moment.
Yeah. As I said, so I wrote nothing by myself. So for the dragging, I use the CDK drop list.
Okay, cool.
And also for the navigation. So when you navigate with the arrow keys in the table, so this is also not made by us. So I use for that maybe let me show just a second. One second. Yeah, the factory. This is also this active descendant key manager is also part of the Angular material CDK.
Yeah.
And this active descendant key manager is also I extend this active descendant key manager to give them more functionality. So with the active descendant key manager by default, which is provided by the Angular material team, you can just navigate in one dimension. So you can arrow up or arrow down. But I give them the behavior that you can also navigate on the left and on the right. So it's cool. We have lot of directives and libraries. So it's the end. I mean, if you want to start, you start really easily. You just put this directive, and then you can say, here, this is draggable and this is editable. But at the end, you can configure everything by yourself. So it's also open to you can control it by yourself. So when you want to use it as a developer, you can say, hey, I don't want to use the arrow keys, or I don't want to use the tab or the enter. So I don't want to give them a different behavior than you can give it. So and I hope my English is okay and you understand everything. Yeah. But let me stop the screen. The spreadsheet is not. I mean, you see in the World Wide Web, there are a lot of spreadsheet libraries, and everyone invents a wheel. So we don't want to invent the wheel. So we are hooking into an existing ecosystem. So in this case, the Angular material is our ecosystem, and we just hooking into the components and give them more behavior, and that in a very easy way. And also, and we also give the ability to configure everything by yourself. So this is our credo. Yeah.
You're taking the pieces that the Angular CDK gives you. You're putting them in the right place, and you're saying here. Your package is essentially the configuration of those pieces with some better data configuration put into that. So I'm all for that. That looks really cool. I am a little intrigued by so as you edit the forms, do you have some? Is the data source being updated itself that you're putting into the table, or is there some other place where you're getting the value changes?
Once you get the data, and the data will not be immutable. It's not the directive will make a copy of the data which will be injected in the table, and you have life cycle. So each time if you change something in the cell, you can it will emit event. So or Yeah.
Sorry about little ones here. Maybe you want to come say hi real quick?
No, it's totally fine.
Sorry, y'all.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
Say hi.
hello.
Hello.
Say hi, Amy. She's made a couple surprise appearances on the show before.
Yeah.
Excited.
Let me show you one thing.
Yeah, here we go.
One thing.
So it sounds like what you're saying is, did you use the template-driven forms then for this? So you hooking in instead into like the lifecycle hooks that Angular exposes to.
Yeah, I'm hooking excessively into the existing Angular material lifecycle directive hooks.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. So this is also here. This is the CDK table. This is
Nice. That's cool.
This is part of Angular.
Mm-hmm.
But so this is a spreadsheet, and as you can see, you have a spreadsheet manager. So when you click on something, you are in an edit mode.
Yeah.
And then it's like a builder. So it's a builder pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so if you make a double click, so I mean, it's the end. It's up to you as a developer to say, okay, I don't want to use your click. You can say whatever you want. So this is
Yeah.
Or yeah. Also,
I don't think that was a valid event circuit.
Yeah.
But I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is very cool.
I mean, when you make a double click, you are in the cell like here, and then you can say lock the arrow keys. So when you make a double click, then you can't use the arrow keys because you are writing something inside of them. And if you type, or if you make a key down enter, then you can say unlock arrow keys, and then set arrow down item active. This will jump to the next cell. And yeah, it's in the usage is very easy, but as I said, you can also configure everything by yourself.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. And now I'm writing the tests, and I wrote some tests, and I hope.
Are you using Spectacular for your tests?
No, I'm not using not now. So I have no pipes. I have no routings.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing more stuff as you come out with it. So.
Yeah, as I said, it's up to you what you want. I mean, you don't have to use the table. You can also use the classes for, I don't know, whatever you want. So everything is reusable. So
yeah,
awesome.
So that's what currently being actively worked on, and Santosh is doing some more schematics for Lumberjack to make it easier to some parts of the library extended with your own drivers and logger services and so on. And what else is going on? Well, we're working on some NX plugins to manage scalable projects. So I've been learning a lot about the new novel dev kit, and even submitted some issues that have been fixed and so on. So that's really nice. Yeah, that will come eventually. We're working on different plugins, and that's for NgWorker. That's all about NX plugins. Some are particular for Angular and NX, but others are generic to NX repos. And ESWorker is a project that Serkan will be adding some. You have created a mini framework earlier, and now you're looking. I guess you're looking to add some of those features so that they can be used in Angular.
I can say something. So I was looking. I have a lot of private projects and a lot of private projects with, I guess, great libraries, and I was looking for a long time for a team. So and but it's hard to find a team, so open source team. At the end, I decided to move everything what I have in private and open to NgWorkers. So
awesome.
By time, yeah, it's hard when you work alone on open source, and it's really hard to find people to work with them. So it's easier to join an existing team. And yeah, I know Lars since 2 years or for 2 years. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, yeah, it's incredible to see the way y'all came together and the stuff y'all are putting out there. So it's the kind of stuff like beyond code. It makes me like happy about humanity. That across nations, across all these country lines and continents, even y'all found each other. Y'all are putting out like really cool stuff with lots of value for anyone to use for free. But awesome.
we are able to support 24 hours. So when we are sleeping, so Nacho can support, and or Santosh can support, or when Santosh is.
you heard it here first, people. 24-hour support from NgWorkers. Yeah. Anytime you have a question, someone's awake.
Can we edit that out?
No. Yeah, we can edit that out. But yeah, no, that's awesome. So around the clock, y'all have stuff.
Yeah, really almost.
How does that work, if you don't mind me asking, with y'all spanning all the different time zones? Do you have some sort of workflow in place? I imagine you must be using like asynchronous forms of communication for most of your stuff.
We're using Discord for communication.
Okay.
We have a bi-weekly team meeting that's kind of between the time zones. It's afternoon for me and Serkan. It's evening for Santosh, and early on in the day in Nacho, with Nacho in Uruguay. And we're mostly working on isolated parts of the different code bases, and then here's a pull request, and we go and review them, or I set up testing for Santosh's. He knows about schematics, so he creates the schematics, and I know about testing and DevOps and all that. So I set up the end-to-end test and integration testing framework and so on for all of that. And now he has a solid foundation to improve his testing skills, because he can use the existing setup, but add new tests for the new schematics.
Right.
And I create Spectacular, and then I get feedback from Serkan about the API, and Nacho will do a video about Spectacular, and he'll do a presentation in Spanish, and I'll do one in English. So we're really complementing each other in a nice way.
It's very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks y'all for spending some of that time with me today. It was awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what else y'all have. It seems like your team has a bright future with the stuff you're working on, the way you're scaling, and yeah, it seems really cool.
Yeah, we have one thing after, hopefully after the spreadsheet. So for that, I need help also from Lars. So we are trying to. Maybe you heard about, Preact and React?
Yes.
Yes. And there is Angular and Pregular. So it's the same to React and Preact. And I also write a blog post, but I could not work on it. So, but after the spreadsheet, I will start. I can share maybe.
Yeah. This is intriguing. Pregular.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pregular. So it's what we want with Pregular is we want to write our own rendering engine, really slick, based on the Angular template engine, so that you can use the Angular template engine in each project. So it's like, So this engine will have some life cycle hooks. So you can write your template engine in Angular as a dev, and then you can say, okay, I want that the compiler should compile to lit HTML or to Preact or to React. So it's like that.
That's interesting. My eyes are bugging out looking at AI based. You got neural net. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote not so much, but I got 40 stars for nothing.
Yeah, look at that. Here, you get one more. There you go, 38.
Yeah, but
I need to go back and hit your other ones. Oh, I feel bad. Here you go. Star.
Yeah, but the main reason is to bring the Angular rendering engine for everyone. So, but in a tiny form, so in the slick form.
Very cool.
So it's basically you use the Angular API, but what gets served to the browser is something more performant or like more to the metal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So now no one can use the Angular template engine, and I like the Angular template engine. It's very impressive and powerful.
Yeah.
And it's like handlebars, but with the Angular syntax fully 100 supported.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been messing around with React a little bit. There's part of like the Angular or the React templating that was nice in a way. Like the TSX feels like JavaScript, you know, in a way that you feel like you don't have to learn much else. But there's, I don't know, the Angulars feels more maybe domain specific, but it's probably a lack of skill. But I know how to do anything in Angular templating. I don't know how to do anything at the moment, at least in React. So there's no shortcuts or shortcomings of either. And so maybe just because I've used it so much, I prefer the Angular one. I think even after being initially impressed and then spending more time falling more back onto the Angular templating. So yeah, thumbs up there. But yeah, very cool. Early draft. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see where this goes. I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, if you're alone, I'm not so motivated, but since I'm part of NgWorkers or ES workers, I'm more motivated to do something. So
yeah.
Oh,
this is very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this. This is a really cool next step.
Yeah, this is in this section. What you are seeing is there. I'm explaining how we can use an ngIf with custom components.
Right.
So,
right. So the custom elements. This is like the HTML API.
No. So I'm obsessed of compilers. So what I'm doing is I'm parsing the Angular template with the Angular template API, and then I'm creating will create this custom elements for simulating ngIf or ng or whatever you want. Gotcha. But this is the early draft. This is not. So everything can be changed, and I guess it will be changed because Lars is part of that, hopefully. So
nice.
Maybe Lars' dream will be comes true. So using Angular without modules.
Nice.
I have a vision for Angular Lite, and one of the things is no modules at all. And Serkan promised he could make it come true.
Well, there we go. We've got a lot of promises coming out.
You can scroll down. Scroll down, I guess, to the end. More.
Keep going.
Here, more. Scroll down, and here we can see which will be planned and which is not be planned, and and I guess modules are not will not be implemented. So this is no view. Yeah, you see.
No Jew check.
No, nothing.
Very cool. Yeah, my zoom's up so people can see it. So I'm not able to scroll. There it is. There it is. Ng modules not supported.
Yeah,
Very
but
cool. I'm
yeah,
very pleased to see this as well. IE 11, it needs to go down. But,
hopefully after the spreadsheet will be end. So in this Easter days, I guess I will write the rest of the tests. So I started I mean, 1 week ago I pushed a lot of tests for the spreadsheet, and in the next days I will make the rest, and then hopefully in the summer we can start with Pregular. So yeah,
cool.
We'll see.
Where's the spreadsheet? Is that under?
Yeah, you can go into NgWorker. NgWorker
repo. It's a mono repo.
Oh, I see.
And then you can choose. No. Go back. You go open as change the main to the main branch. You have to change the branch.
Gotcha.
Left. No. Yeah. There's this.
I got there.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And then you can go into the packages, and then spreadsheet.
Is it in material?
Last one? No. Go back.
I think it was right.
Okay. I guess it was in CDK. Yeah, in CDK source.
There it is.
Yeah. And no, it's not this one. No. You have to go. Into material and then spreadsheet.
Okay. Material source.
Yeah.
There we go. These tests are coming along 5 days ago. Very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, let's make sure we give this a star too. Oh wait, I already started. There you go. Oh, that's because it's the mono repo.
Yeah.
See, they need to add more GitHub. Where's Sad Josh when you need him? He uses GitHub star powers to be able to star specific libraries of a mono repo for better feedback.
Well, if you want to sprinkle more stars, we have 2 more mono repos. It's in different organizations. It's in different organizations. So this is NgWorker. Then we have NxWorker.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But someone stole that name, so you have to do NX-Worker for the organization.
Gotcha. Organizations. Is it users? No, this is this right?
Oh, yeah, this is the one. But if you look in the URL, you'll see that there's actually a dash.
Gotcha.
There was a user called NxWorker. So this is our. Oh, you already have that start. I see.
I just clicked it.
Oh, okay. Too fast for my screen, I guess. And we have ESWorker, and that might also be with a dash. Do you remember, Sarkan? Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
This one down here?
Not the top one. That's a user, right? So this one probably also has a dash.
The fake ESWorker. There you go.
But we got the ESWorker, NxWorker, and NgWorker NPM organizations or namespaces.
Nice.
So that's without the dash. So we have those similarities, and we're working on similar logos as well for the organizations.
Very cool.
To show that it's the same team, because they are. One is about Angular, one is about NX, and this one is about everything JavaScript, not a specific framework or tool.
JavaScript, yeah.
Very cool. I like seeing this. Oh, you're using the cloud. Awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
For sure.
And not for Lumberjack because it's still an Angular CLI workspace, but for NxWorker, it is really, it's been nice. We have the open source license from now on for the NX Cloud. That's really, really neat.
Very cool. Yeah, I was checking to see if you had pull requests to see if you had integrated the cloud.
We have an NgWorker, the NgWorker repo.
Let's see. Let's find that one. Let's go back a couple times. There you go.
That's in, yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Great. We're really happy about that. There's
Awesome.
support for open source. And it's even in public, like it's in the README, or you can click one of those links, right? And you can see our NxCloud dashboards.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Let's see.
So it's a public NxCloud organization, because why not?
Oh. Maybe not.
I guess maybe this was too long ago.
Could be.
Maybe
the README file.
Sorry, what was that?
You should see it in the README file of this repo. There should be a link to NxCloud.
Okay, let's see. To code.
Yeah. This one should work. What's it saying?
Saying we have no cache steps for NgWorker.
Try 30 days and like last 30 days, maybe. No, I guess it's
there. It is.
There we go. Yeah.
Look at that. 7 hours saved. Very cool. I wonder what that's. It's interesting, but yeah, so cool.
So since we don't have any packages published yet from this repo, we haven't been using it much, but we have the whole setup with NxCloud, and it works locally and in our GitHub Actions, so that's nice. Very nice tool, and we want to move the NgWorker. I think that already uses the cloud, but Lumberjack is outside of the NgWorker mono repo for now. So that's where most of the work was being done.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Well, folks, we're on 2 hours. We're going on 3. We should probably set this down.
Yeah.
It's just to say again, thanks so much for everything y'all are doing. Thanks for coming on, and
You're working on Novel, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So I'm working on their NX stuff at the moment. I'm just moving on. I'm working on the NX team for a little bit here.
Yeah. But Novel has also real customers, right? So real customers, like, I don't know, so making
y'all are real customers too. Well, yes, so like with our the contracting work we do, often people go for the NX Cloud. We have like the on-premises options available too, which is
on-premises also available.
Yep. So you can you can have your own server that will.
And how does it cost?
What's that?
How does it cost?
The information is available on NX Cloud.
Okay.
But I think we recently. I'm not super familiar with the NX Cloud, how it's working at the moment, but there is some changes that we've been putting in where before we had this model I really liked actually, where we were charging people based on the time they saved. I like that because it made sense to me. We're aligning the incentives between the people using it and us. We want to save you time. So if we're doing our job well, we want to be. Everything's in line then, but I think it was confusing for some people to like understand, well, how much is this going to cost, and some worries about like, well, what if we end up saving a lot of time and then we have to pay a lot of money. So we've gone to now I think a monthly rate, I believe is what we did. So I think for people on the legacy, they may have the option to stay with what they had. So
one of the confusions there was it said in some marketing campaigns that it was developer time saved, but it's actually compute time saved. And CI can run in parallel. The developer only has one timeline. So it's not developer time saved. Like it can be 10 hours saved for the CI, but that's just 1 hour saved for the developer compared to running it all those processes himself on his machine.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think we get that, and it's also kind of like the calculating the time saved, if I recall, like we're doing it based off of the last time it ran. So how much time did we save you versus the last time it ran? It's kind of a nebulous thing to claim, but we saved you this amount of time, which is, I think with the way we were doing it was pretty accurate, but it's still kind of a hard sell to some people. So I'm looking forward to seeing, if this way gives us some more people in, because I think the tooling to it is enough reason to maybe buy into it on its own, with the GitHub stuff we were seeing there, where on your pull request you can see their NX report. Clicking through the links and seeing the logs, that's just nice. I really like that when Ben wrote that out. So very cool there. But yeah. Before we keep going, I gotta end this. Thanks y'all again for what y'all do, and I'll properly end it this time. So see y'all. Thanks everyone for watching.